Well, I've been asked several times to do a video on reloading, particularly rifle cartridges, and that's that can be a huge subject there. I've been at this game a long, long time, and I have literally probably practiced and tried every technique you could ever imagine. And I mean, from extremes, I mean, to the bench rest competition shooters stuff, to which is just, I mean, you're looking for the absolute ultimate in accuracy. And go to extreme lengths to attain that. I've done that, but I'm no longer this was bench rest shooting competition. Well, I'm no longer involved in any of that, so. And that's one extreme. And the other extreme, I guess, is just grab up a box of factory ammo, or if you happen to have the dies and components around, just go to a load manual, pick you up a load, and go away. Start off with it. But, I mean, gone are the days when you can go down to the gun shop and buy anything you want, any kind of component or anything else you want. That's just, at least for now, that's the time to pass. And quite frankly, all this shortage we have on everything else, you hear a myriad excuses for it, why there is, but basically it boils down to politics. Politics as practiced by our politicians, or politics as perceived by us. Whatever. Politics has caused most of our shortage, and that shortage has resulted in ever-increasing prices. And of course, the scarcity and hard to get materials and everything else. And most of all that goes back to politics too. But anyway, we have an extreme shortage of components, ammunition, and we have, and when you do find something, it's very, very hot. So I've given it a little bit of thought, and what I'm going to do here, I'm going to call it practical reloading. This technique that I'm going to show you here is just what I do. That's not what you have to, it's what I do. But it is a technique that will allow you to get the maximum case life out of your brass. It'll allow you to get quite a number of reloads out of it, and at the same time it'll be quite accurate, highly accurate, or at least as accurate as your rifle's able to deliver. But anyway, I'm striving for longevity in your cases. That cuts your cost way down. We're trying to cut costs down here. Then how to get the longest case life and the best accuracy with a reasonable amount of effort. It's not a time drawn out thing like if you're going to be in bench rest competition or something like that. No, but it's trying to get really good accuracy out of your hunting rifle. I call it, let's try to get varmint rifle accuracy out of our deer and elk rifles. That's what I'm shooting. That's what I'm always striving for. So anyway, I'm going to show you what I do to achieve those goals. And the first thing you got to do is you're going to have some brass, find some brass. Now, you can take factory ammo if you can find it, and if you can afford it. You can fire the factory ammo and wind up with some brass out of that. You can take this factory ammo, or whatever, fire it in your rifle. Now you've got once fired brass that pretty much fits your chamber. That's a really good place to start with. Or you can get brass that somebody gave you, found or whatever, this or brass that was fired in a rifle other than yours, which is what this is. I'm not really sure. I mean, I've had this box of ammunition laying around, I don't know how many years. I really don't. And I don't know what this was fired in. I think it was fired in a Bikel, over and under 30-06 12 gauge that I have, and I absolutely love that rifle. But I think it may have been fired in that, but I'm not positive. But anyway, you can come up with brass that was fired in another gun, or if you can find it, you can find factory brass, just bags of brass that's never been loaded. So you got several avenues here. So whether you're going to wind up with factory brass that's fired in your gun, or whatever, and that's going to be a very common thing. So first of all, we need to go out here and we'll fire a couple of rounds, and so we'll have some that's actually fired in this rifle. But before we fire our brass, I want to take a measurement that's somewhere along the shoulder. And as you know, these bottleneck cartridges say headspace on the shoulder. So I want to take a measurement somewhere along the slope of this shoulder to see what this cartridge case is, length, from the factory. So I have a Hornady, and there's several of these made by different people. This is a Hornady lock and load setback gauge, a shoulder setback gauge. So I want to measure from somewhere along that shoulder to see what the length of this is. So I get it in my trusty gauge here while applying pressure on the wheel, put it up. I move this cartridge around to find the neutral point right there. That's where it's at. And then I want to measure this length, see how long this unfired factory brass is on this one. Well, in this one, it is 4.043 inches. All right, 4.043. It's measuring more than one, of course. See what this one is. Same thing, 4.043 inches. This happens to be federal brass. So I'm very fortunate out here that there in the country where I live. But I took a couple of federal factories, and I have shooting benches, and several shooting benches in various places around the farm here. But I just went in there and opened the back door, and it's raining outside. I don't get wet, so I went there and I opened the back door and put my some earplugs in and fired a couple over here on the hillside. So I got me a couple of rounds that's been fired to this rifle. And this rifle happens to be a Ruger #1 light sporter. So I'm going to again measure that cartridge after firing it and see what that's out to. Especially since it darn cataracts developing. Okay. Factory brass is 4.043. Now when I shot this, it's 4. This is fired in my Ruger #1 there. It's this one's 4.048. Now I'm going to just check a couple of these that was fired in a different gun, but I don't really know what that gun was. It's, yeah. Anyway, let's see what this is. 4.052. That's 9,000. Yep. 4.052. And the unfireds, this particular batch, .042. 4.2 or 4.3, they're checking right in there. So we'll call it 4.043. That's what your factory is. And fired out of my Ruger, which this is what I'm reloading for. I'm reloading for a particular cartridge or particular rifle. Now, if I was reloading for just 30-06, this is 30-06 by the way, but if I was reloading for 30-06 in general, I would do a little bit different. I'd make the setback a little bit more. But what I'm shooting for is a 2,000 setback. It's might as well say 044. So I want to come back to about 4.043 on all of them. That's going to be my goal to start out with. I may change my mind later, but this is what I'm going to shoot for. So I want to arrive at a 2,000th setback. So the first thing I got to do, and I'm going to gather up a little bit of this brass, and I'm going. One good thing about the technique that I'm using, you can take the brass like this brass that was fired in an unknown gun that's way too big. No way in the world this is going to go back in my Ruger. But I can take any kind of brass, and by using this knowing what my chamber length is, I've got to have a few of them fired out of my chamber to know what my chamber length is. And to me, my chamber is 4.044. That's really close to what my chamber is. It could be between 044 and 043. But I'm going to go with its 044. So I want to set it back to .042. And this Federal ammo, boy, it just happens to be a real close match to my Ruger chamber, but it's not a close match at all to that Michael chamber at all. But anyway, I want all this brass shoved back, the shoulder pushed back. So I've got a 4.042 measurement, and that will have set this shoulder back 2,000ths of an inch, which is enough to get me enough clearance for that gun. Yet I'm still going to have a very, very good fit to that chamber. Not an absolute fit like you might want if you were bench rest shooting or something of that nature, but you want a really good fit that's reliable. It's going to chamber under field conditions, yet it's going to be as close to that chamber as you can comfortably get it and still have that little margin to play with. And So that, from your accuracy viewpoint, you're going to have a cartridge that really closely fits your chamber, yet it chambers easy. And it's only going to have an average of 0.02 of an inch stretch in the head every time you fire it. Like if I fire those in that bike, it's got 0.10 inch, you're not going to get many reloads out of that for you're going to have head separation. But if you're only expanding, the cartridge is only growing by 0.02 of an inch and then brought back 0.02 of an inch, you'll get a whole lot more life out of your brass because you're not working it near as much. So the first thing that I want to do is get me a little bit of brass here because I am going to be working with this thing for a while, and I do have some once fired out of the Michael, quite a bit out of that, and I'm going to take quite a bit of this brass, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to anneal it. By annealing that the cartridge mouth and shoulder area, the neck and shoulder area, you're going to every time you load and unload, load and reload that brass you're working, it becomes work hardened. So I like to, every time it's fired, the first thing I'm going to do, or one of the first things I'm going to do, is anneal that front. The first step is I got to gather up whatever brass it is I'm going to be working with here right now. So step number one. When I take this fired brass, whether it's fired in my gun or any other gun, it doesn't really matter. When the gases blow back along here, it leaves a deposit. It's a carbon deposit. That really needs to be got off. You can run this thing in a tumbler for hours on end and everything else trying to get that off. But the easiest way that I find is just take some very fine, real fine steel wool and just grip it just around the neck and shoulder a couple of times around the neck and shoulder. It'll take off all that carbon and they'll leave you with a nice shiny piece of brass up here in the front. So to get started annealing, we just got a regular, this happens to be a Burns-O-Matic, regular torch. Get that fired up. Turn it back till you got just not a roaring flame, just a comfortable flame. There's a lot of different techniques for doing this annealing, but I think this one works just fine for me. And you want, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds, something like that. Jack Cow, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, works just fine. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Get it hot enough without getting it overly hot. Works great. So far we've done 2 things. We've cleaned the carbon and any kind of fouling, any kind of things off the case, the neck and shoulder area with their little steel wool, and we've annealed them. And right now, while we're waiting for that brass to cool, let's take a look at our dies. Now, in this case, these are Pacific. These are Pacific dies. I mean, whatever name brand really doesn't matter, but these happen to be Pacific. But remember, we're going to be trying to set that shoulder back 0.02 of an inch. And I haven't used these dies in, I don't know, in a long time. I haven't reloaded 30-06 in quite some time. So, but whether I had or I hadn't, if you start out with, we're starting afresh. And when we're going to go to set this brass back, we may run that brass up and have to run that brass up and in and out of that case several times. And every time you do that, of course this is full-length resizing die, you're squeezing that neck down. Then when you bring it back out, that expander ball is expanding it right back out. Well, you're work hardening your brass. Well, you don't need to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this expander out and the pin, which of course that'll take my pin out and knocks my primer out. But I don't need to knock that primer out right now, because you remember I am setting this die up to a rifle. I'm setting this die up to a Ruger #1 30-06. I'm setting this up not for just general reload for any old 30-06 comes down the die. I'm setting this die to reload to that cartridge, to that rifle chamber. That's what this is. So, and I've got the decap and pins expander plug out. They were quite dirty, so I'm cleaning all the gunk off of them. Get them nice and clean, so when I put it back, everything will be fine. I'm also going to clean out this die just a little bit. So I've backed my die well back off your adjustment ring. Put that. And this die should be backed out way far enough to where not going to be any danger of pushing that shoulder back any too much. Now let's talk about case lube. Now, use whichever one you want. I happen to like the Hornady Unique, but I get a little bit on my hand and I just rub a little bit. Now, you don't want a bunch of this. You do want it coated. Make sure you got the body of your brass coated. Do not, repeat, do not ever put your lube on your neck or the shoulder. It don't need to be there, period. Just on the body. Remember that. That's the only place. That's the only place you want to put this lube. It's on the body. Remember, we've got this die set up here to where it's just going to work on the body. We're not going to do it. It will pull the neck down, but it won't expand it again. So I'm just going to run this brass up in that. Let's look and see how far it went. Well, obviously, I don't know if you can see it on here or not, but it pushed the neck back. It's pushing the neck back a little bit, and it's a long ways from the shoulder. I can see where it's drawing down on the neck. So I'm going to turn my die down a little bit. Now I'm going to run it back in there again. Seeing it right now, as I push this up in there, I'm just progressively pulling the whole case back and letting that neck sizing portion just barely walk its way, slowly walk its way down. Okay, let's do it again. I'm just can visually see. I'm not anywhere near back to the where it's expanded down the neck. I'm not back to the shoulder area at all yet. So I have not. This die has not touched the shoulder yet at all. but it's getting closer, so I'm just making small adjustments, slowly turning my die down. And see, if you had that expander plug in there, you'd be working that brass like crazy. But I don't have it in there, so I'm not working it. All right, now that's getting close, but not quite. And I can visibly look and see that I'm not full length resizing it yet. I'm getting close, but not there. So now I'm going to check it and check my length here. Okay. I'm slowly working it on down and going back and rechecking it. You might find it right interesting, but this particular couple of pieces of brass that I'm working on started out 0.54. Now they're up to 0.59 inches. So as I keep working it into this full length resizing die, it's squeezing that body down, and it's actually kind of like you squeeze a banana or something, you're going to pop it out. So it's actually right at this point, it's starting to lengthen the brass just a little. We've not made contact with the shoulder at all, and it is actually pushing the shoulder forward a little bit. It's still 5.4. All right, we're almost back to where the size it was when I started. So I'm going to turn it down just a little more, adjust a little bit more, run it back in here again. Start to bump it back, so I just keep turning it down just a little more at a time. Run it back in, measure it. Uh-oh. Overdid it. That one little measurement. So I'm going to set that brass aside and I'm going to back off just a little bit. Get me another piece of brass, lube it up good. These threads, these on this die are so coarse that I had to go to take several attempts. One time I'd be a little too short, and the next time a little too long. By exercising a little bit of patience, back and forth, I think I've finally hit it where I want it. I'll run a few of them and see. This one is exactly where I want it. This one should be very close to there too. Yep. All right. There's two. I'm going to run three just to make sure. Now, like I said, once you've got this set and you lock those dies down, you don't have to go through this again. You just jerk them out of the box, run your brass through it, you're in good shape. But it'll only be fit to that gun. Well, those look good. Those look real good. But before, remember these were ones that was several thousand, 10,000 is too long. So I'm going to check and see if these will actually go in my Ruger right now. Before I resized this brass, it would not go in this chamber. But now, I just drop it. It goes all the way home. No problem. 2,000 setbacks working great. Now you want to carefully lock that die. You do not want to mess with that adjustment at all. You want to lock that firmly, and I mean firmly, in place. But anyway, first of all, we cleaned the cartridge neck and shoulder area with steel wool. Got all the carbon off of it. And then we annealed them. And then we went through all that process of setting that die to get a 2,000 shoulder setback. But once that's done, then you don't have to do it anymore for that particular die and chamber combination. If you set it to that rifle. So that's set. So now you just go about your normal, this would be my normal reloading procedure. What I'm going to show now. But now, one thing you got to do now, like I said, you do not lubricate that neck and shoulder area at all, period. But that inside, when you look inside the neck of your cartridge, when you look inside it, you'll see I can't get it to show up in here, but it's a dull gray area. That's the carbon buildup, and that's what your bullet's going to stick on. And you will get this thing stuck, your expander ball stuck in that cartridge if you don't get rid of that. So you want to make a pass or two with the brushers to get that carbon out of there. Then when you look at it, this should be nice and clean, not that dull. Now what I like to do, I like to take my Hornady lube and rub it on the bristles of my brush. And this is a nylon brush, it's not a brass brush. Now, my next step in this whole process would be go through all of my brass and clean that carbon out of that neck at this stage. Take your brush, put a little bit of lubricant on the outside, and run that brush back and forth through that neck 2 or 3 times. You want to get that neck good and clean on the inside. Do that first. All of them. Then I take each one, rub just a little bit of lube on the body part, not the shoulder and the neck. That's all you got to do for now. It's just, after you shoot them, just this procedure here. You don't have to go through all that resetting and everything again. So now I've got all my brass sized with a 2,000 shoulder setback with the expander plug and all that in there. Just to make sure before I go and load everything up in this thing. Find out that I do have a problem of some description I'm not anticipating. I'm still just going to make sure that it does chamber in the rifle good again. And it chambers beautiful. So now we've got all of our brass sized as far as our shoulder set back and all that. But what we don't know, what about the overall cartridge case length? So now we want to check that. So we're through with this little apparatus now, this little Hornady setback gauge. We're through with that. Now at this point I'm going to just take me a little paper towel, wipe off sizing lube. While I'm doing that, I give my brass a little bit of an inspection. Make sure there's no cracks or anything else, neck cracks or anything else that I might have missed. Take a minute, get rid of the lube, and lift your brass over. Now you want to go to your reloading manual and see what your maximum overall case length should be. So according to the Hornady manual, the maximum case length is 2.494 with the recommended trim to length of 2.484. So decide on something between 2.484 and 2.494. You got 10 thousandths to play with there. So let's just take a few measurements and see what I actually have here. Okay. The 2.484. 2.484. And I am at 2.98. So this definitely needs, they definitely need to be short. Now what I'm using here is a old Forster case trimmer, and I mean old. I really need to order me a new trimmer head because it's getting quite dull. Anyway, I want to loosen the main adjustment ring, slide the whole cutter head up till it comes in contact with my case mount. Then when that's in contact there, I want to lock that adjustment collar pretty much down where it's at. Now, on this one, you have a fine adjustment, so I want to back that off a little bit. Now let's see how much it's going to cut. Not much. Back it down a little more. Now, once you have your trimmer set to the right length, be sure and lock everything down. Now it's just from here on out, it's just a simple matter of trimming to length. Very simple. Now, all right, we've got the right length now. Now, once you've got the right length, this is cut off, it's square on the end and very rough. It's got a burr on the outside of the neck and it'll have a burr on the inside of the neck. We've got to get rid of that outside burr and the inside burr. That's simple to do with this. This is an RCBS deburring tool, is what it's called. Very, very simple. I've had this for probably over 50 years. Still works just fine. You just take on the outside of the neck, twist it a few times, and you will feel, if there's any burr left, you'll feel it. So you want to get rid of that outside burr. Then on the inside, you got to chamfer the inside of that neck. what you want to do here, you're not just removing the burr, you're actually chamfering or putting a bevel on the inside of this all the way around. It's making like a feeding ramp maybe for your bullets when you get ready to load them. If it's a boat tail bullet, it'll just kind of drop down in there without any trouble. But if it's a flat base bullet, you need this inside bevel to start that bullet. Then, so you just do that. All your cartridges, it doesn't take long at all. Just bevel the outside, feels good. Chamfer the inside. All well and done. Then that leaves some of those fine shavings inside your neck, which you need to. I like to get rid of them. I just take a dry nylon brush and that gets rid of all that shavings that's inside. Very simple. And then one last thing that I do, when I've got a case cut to length, and we're just the right length that I want, I take that and I put it in the die box. So anytime that I've come back to this caliber and I've used my case trimmer to trim other cartridges and what have you, I simply just pop that one out of the case, stick it in here, and I've got my I now will have my trimmer set up in an instant. Just takes a second. I do that for every cartridge that I reload. I put that dummy, that one that I've got set correctly, I put it in the box, so when I need to reset this, it's just a matter of loosening this ring. It's a matter of putting it in, loosening this ring right here, sliding it up to the right position, and going on. That's all it takes. So I just simply take a nylon brush, don't take much. One pass in, one pass out. Usually all it takes. Now we got the brass cleaned out of the inside of those necks. Next little step that I like to do, take an inside a pocket cleaner, primer pocket cleaner. It's not a reamer, it's a cleaner. So I just put it in and it takes a couple of quick tests, couple of taps. I'm sure you can't see it on here, but as I twist that back and forth the way I've got the light on, I can see little minute bits and pieces of debris flying out of that pocket. Then I'll make a couple of taps, make sure anything that might be stuck in there comes on out. Now I've got one more little step that I like to do. And I want to check that flash hole, the primer. Now you can use anything you want to, and they make fancy tools to do that way. I simply like to just take a wooden toothpick, works wonders. Now, at this point, what you've got is some brass, the brass that's of what I would consider to be a high quality as far as it being ready to reload. You've got brass that's uniform. Each one's just like the other. As far as the overall length is concerned, their fullness size, but to where they just set your shoulder back within 2/1000ths of an inch of your chamber. They're cleaned. They're sized. Primer pockets cleaned. The flash holes cleaned. They're ready to go. This is all that you really need, or that I prefer, or really think you need to do to come up with some really precision loads as far as your brass is concerned. Now there's a myriad other things you can do if you're going to really get into the super accurate target stuff, bench rest shooting, extreme long range shooting, that sort of thing. I'm talking about practical field loads, practical hunting loads, accurate hunting loads. Hunting loads, big game loads with the accuracy potential of a varmint rifle. I'm talking about sub MOA. Most of the time around 5/8 and a half an inch. That's very good accuracy. Plenty good accuracy for any kind of hunting out to at least 400 yards, which I consider to be the outside edge of ethical shooting. So we got our brass is all ready. It's been annealed. She's ready to go. She's ready to start working up your favorite pet load into it, or you got some brass that's ready to start working up a load. So as far as the brass is concerned, which is probably one of the more expensive parts of reload, your brass is prepared, it's ready to go. And that's all I ever really ever need to do anymore. It's not what I used to do all the time. You can do all kinds of stuff, but that's as far as I go these days, son. If you'll do that, you'll have really good brass to work with. It'll be consistent. It'll last a long time. You do that annealing process, do all that, it will last a long time, many firings. And particularly if you got that 2,000 setback, because you're not stretching it like crazy here at the head every time you pull the trigger on. So you'll get good life out of it, and you got a good case from which to start building your reloads from. We'll get into load development in a little bit of video to come, but that's what I do to prepare my brass. That's what I've been asking. I hope that makes sense to you. Talk soon.